So here we go. All right, so first off, the ACT math portion is 60 questions in 60 minutes. Not all questions will take exactly a minute. All the answers are listed from least to greatest or smallest to biggest. And then so if you're using your answer choice to help you find your answer, you want to pick the middle choice. So it's either C or H that you want to start with, and then you kind of know whether you need to go smaller or bigger. A lot of times the words are there to distract you. Start with finding the question first. Okay. Oh, let me add one more person in. Okay. So I want you guys to take a minute, read over this one. And you can probably say, this is a lot of words for hardly any work, because that's exactly what it is. It's no work, just looking at. Okay. So number 3, it says a distance in meters, M, can be approximated by multiplying a distance in yards, Y, by 1.0936. Which of these expressions expresses this approximation method? And then it tells you what that little squiggly means. But now you already know what that means, so you don't have to read the note when you actually take the ACT. So, which one looks like multiplication? Boom, C. That Y times that 1.0936. It's not E because it has the Y also in there. It would have 2 Y's being multiplied to that 1.0936. That's not needed. Okay. Guys, I'm not gonna pause and say like, hey, anyone have any questions? I'm expecting you guys to just unmute and let me know. We have a lot of questions to get through, and I want you to have plenty of work time by yourself at the end. So please, please, please either put it in the chat and or just shout it out if you have a question. Okay. All right, here's number 4. It says Seth has 4 plaid shirts, 5 solid colored shirts hanging together in a closet. In his haste to get ready for the work, he randomly grabs one of these 9 shirts. What is the probability that the shirt Seth grabs is plaid? So what you want to know is your part over whole. And so the part that Seth may grab is his number of plaid shirts. So that's 4 out of his whole. So what is the total amount of shirts that he has? 9. Boom. He's got H, 4 over 9. Awesome. Number 5, the daily totals of enrollment at Sunnyside Summer Camp last Monday through Saturday were 17, 19, 23, 14, 25, and 28. What was their average numbers of enrollments per day? So the key word here is average. It wants you to take the average of those 6 numbers. So you add them all together. 17 plus 19 plus 23 plus 14 plus 25 plus 28. I'm going to put that in my handy dandy calculator.
It will be 126.
Ooh, thank you. You're faster than me. Divide by 6. Did you do that part? My calculator's frozen.
21.
21. Boom. C is our answer. So hopefully you realize out of these first 3 questions, is that we're in the lower numbers of the test. And as the numbers of the test increase, you're going to see the processes of these algebra questions are going to get a little bit harder. So just kind of realize that these are going to be the easier ones. Not to say that you don't need to go over them before you take the test, because we want to make sure we can do them as fast as we can so we can have more time on those harder questions. All righty. Okay, our cartoon of paper, or a carton, I'm sorry. A carton of paper is priced at $27 now. If the paper goes on sale for 25% of the current price, what will be the sale price of the carton? Well, and be careful. So to get the sale price, first you're going to multiply it, and this is exactly what I'm going to put in my calculator, is 27 times 0.25. Okay, because that's going to be the quickest way for me to get what is the percent.
675. 6.75.
Yes, ma'am. So this is not the answer. This is just the percent off. To get your answer, you're going to subtract 27 minus 6.75. And that is $20.25. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Says, what is the slope of any line parallel to the line given? So you need to know from this. Now, some people may argue this is actually a geometry question, but you actually learn about slopes in Algebra 1 and sometimes even in pre-algebra. So a slope that is parallel is going to have the same slope of the line that's given to us. But in order to figure this out, or the easiest way, is to put this in slope-intercept form, which is that y equals mx plus b. So we're going to solve for y. So given 2x minus 3y equals 7, subtract. And then divide. And notice how those negatives right here cancel each other out and become positive. And I'm looking at my slope of my line given, and I know that the slope of any line parallel to this line has to be the exact same slope, which is going to be exactly 2/3. Okay. Andrew won a cash prize on a game show. Andrew paid taxes of 30% of the original cash prize and had $28,000 remaining. How much was the original cash prize? So something that is side note over here is anytime they're talking about the change of percent, there's a percent change formula. It's called, and you say it's the old, or you could say original minus new, and it's divided by the old. So percent change equals the old value minus the new value divided by the old. And we're going to use that to solve for how much Andrew won. Okay. So the percent change we know is that 30%. So I'm going to go ahead, instead of writing 30%, I'm going to write that 0.3. Because that's easier for me to put in the calculator than it is for 30%. Because 90% of the time your percent button is hiding in your calculator, and you don't need to spend that time looking for it. So anyways, so the old number, we don't know what his original winnings were. So that's going to be our variable minus the new number, 28,000, and then divide by, again, the variable that we don't know. Solving for x, I'm going to first get rid of my fraction by multiplying by x on both sides. So I have 0.3x equals x minus 28,000. Then I got to get my variables on the same side. So I'm going to subtract x, 0.3, and then remember this is a 1. 0.3 minus 1 is negative 0.7, and that still has an x on it, is equal to negative 28,000. And it's okay that it's negative because now when we divide that by 0.7, those negatives cancel and we get 40,000. So notice how when you divided by that percent, you divide by that decimal that's less than 1, the number increased to 40,000. Okay. Oh, this one's smaller. Okay, so it says, what is the value of the absolute value of 5 minus a if a equals 9? Now look, I want you to realize the trick here, or the reason why this one's considered to be harder than like number 1, is that absolute value. So remember, you have to remember what absolute value means. But first, you're going to plug in 9 is a. So 5 minus 9 equals the absolute value of negative 4. Now the absolute value of negative 4, this is your distance from 0. So a little teaching moment here. Even if this had ended up being positive 4, the answer is still 4. It's how far away is it from 0. It's not a sign change. Okay. For all m and n, what is 3m plus n times m squared minus n? So this is, it looks more complicated than it actually is, but it's actually something you guys know, is how to FOIL. Or you could use box method. Whichever one you're more comfortable using, you can use. I'm going to use box method just because it's easier for me to show you how to multiply what I'm multiplying through box method. Now I'm going to admit, when I did it by myself, preparing for today's lesson, I used FOIL. So FOIL is probably faster here. If you don't know, that F stands for first, outer, inner, last, and I can model that through box method here. So we have 3m times m squared. That would be our first terms multiplied together. So that would end up being 3m to the third. Our outer is going to be 3m times negative n. So that's going to go in this box. So negative 3mn, because you can't multiply variables together in this unless they have the same base. My inner is n times m squared. So m squared times n. And then last is our n times negative n. So that's negative n squared. So usually you can check your diagonal for your like terms, but in this case, none of these are like terms. So we just put them all in a line, or because you're going super fast because you're taking the ACT, you just look for the terms in the answers. So we see 3m to the third, so that could be f or k. And then I see negative 3mn. Boom, negative 3mn. This one doesn't have it. F is not my answer, but K is. Notice how I found the answer without even looking at the rest of the problem. That's okay. Just double check it. Make sure when you eliminate, you might want to circle it, come back later to double check it, triple check it if you want. But a lot of times with ACT questions, it's, you know, I do want you to all the way do the work, but sometimes halfway is okay if you can see the answer already. All right, number 13. 13 is going to probably be my favorite of the night because it's just solving for x. So we have 13 minus 2 times x plus 5 equals question mark. So I'm just simplifying this. So 13 minus 2x minus 10, combining my like terms, negative 2x plus 3 is my answer. So A is my answer. That's all right, Chiquisha. I'm glad you're here. All right, 14. 14 is another awesome one because this one scares a lot of kids because we have these huge exponents. But if you can remember your exponent rules, I'm going to write some of them over here for you guys to put down in your notes. So exponent rules are when you could have power to power, which is the one we're looking at now. And it kind of looks like this. You multiply the powers. So 7 times 11 is 77. Boom, F is our answer. Let's see, another exponent rule, you have to have the same base. And then you would add your exponents when you're multiplying. If you're dividing, you subtract the exponents. Let's see. Oh, anything raised to the 0 power is always a 1. That's a fun one. I think that's it. These are some pretty good ones. Oh, and then if you have a negative exponent, it's the same thing as 1 over. It puts it in a fraction or on the bottom of the fraction. All right, I'm ready to move forward. If you guys are, if not, holla. Okay. All right, so number 19, when n equals 1/4, what is the value of 2n minus 5 divided by n? So anytime they give you that value, you plug it in to where you see the variable. So it's 2 times 1/4 minus 5 over 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and simplify the top. That's going to be 2 over 4 minus 5. Now, real quick, dividing by that fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm actually going to multiply this by 4. The reciprocal of 1/4. So remember, reciprocal is to flip. So if I'm given 1/4, the reciprocal is that 4 over 1. So I can keep going. And what I'm going to do here, I'm not going to subtract this because we don't like fractions, right? What I can actually do is I'm going to distribute this. Now, if you have a fancy calculator with a fraction bar, you 100% can put that in there and get your answer, okay? But I'm just going to show you what you can do without it. If I multiply this here, these 4s will cancel, okay? Or if you wanted to multiply it out, you could, and I'll show you why it's just going to end up being 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 4 times 5 is 20. And then last but not least, 2 minus 20 is negative 18. Okay, number 20, a proofreader can read 40 pages in 1 hour. How many pages can this proofreader read in 90 minutes? So again, this is where we're going to go back to our part and whole. But in this case, we're comparing two things. So this is going to look like a proportion. So I'm going to have 2 parts and 2 wholes. So I can see that I'm given that the proofreader can read 40 pages in 1 hour. But before I write 1 right here, I notice that my other part is written in minutes. So instead of 1 hour, I'm going to put 60. So those times match each other. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay. So then how many pages can this proofreader read in 90 minutes? I don't know what the part is, but I do know out of the whole it's going to come out of. So you can cross multiply. 60x equals 3,600. Divide by 60, and x equals 60. So G. Okay, 25. In the standard XY coordinate plane, what is the slope of the line joining the points 3, 7, and 4, -8? This is a formula that you will have to memorize. I hope you already do. Your slope formula, given 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2. To find the slope, we subtract y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Sometimes it's even labeled with an M for slope. So plugging in that information, we're going to use -8 minus 7 divided by 4 minus 3. -8 minus 7. This is something, guys, if you haven't been practicing this, again, increasing your speed, is find some Kahoots that are, you're practicing with adding and subtracting integers and multiplying with integers with those positive and negative numbers, just so you can kind of do that mental math of -8 minus 7. So you're not having to put that in the calculator. And probably you do already know it, because what I see most out of my students is they doubt themselves. So they don't trust themselves that they know what -8 minus 7 is. So they feel like they have to put it in the calculator because they have the calculator. But you really want to have that confidence when you're taking the ACT. Trust yourself, believe in yourself, because you don't always have to take the time to put in the calculator. It may be seconds, but if you think about it, even if it took you 5 seconds per problem, that's 300 seconds, and that's 5 minutes off your test if you were to spend 5 seconds on every problem on your calculator. So just be careful, is all I say. Okay, number 26, it says, which of the following is a solution set of x plus 2 is greater than -4? They're trying to trick you with all this fancy notation, but doesn't trick us. So x plus 2 is greater than -4. Solve it, subtract 2. X is greater than -6. You just pick the one that says x is greater than -6. Boom, you've got it. Okay, some things with inequalities though, they may give you that graph instead of the set notation. Just remember that this symbol is an open circle, and then if it was greater than or equal to, it would have been a closed circle on the line for 6. Okay. In the standard XY coordinate plane, what is the y-intercept of the line given by the equation 3x plus 5y equals 8? So same thing as we saw earlier is that we're going to put this in that slope intercept form. And remember that B represents that y-intercept. So we have 3x plus 5y equals 8. I'm going to subtract 3x. 5y equals -3x plus 8. The y is not all the way by itself yet. So I'm going to divide 5 by each term. My slope is -3/5. My y-intercept is 8/5. Okay. There are 16 ounces in 1 pound. That was so nice of them to give it to you. I doubt this is an older test. I kind of would try to keep that one in my back pocket. Make sure you know that 16 ounces is 1 pound. If 3.4 pounds of beef costs $4.95, what is the cost per ounce to the nearest cent? So on this one, we want to find out how many ounces we have in total first. So we're going to multiply 16 times 3.4, which is 54.4. Okay, so this is my total ounces. Then I'm going to take that 4.95. Now, thinking about this, I want a really small number. Okay, if you were to divide it 54.4 divided by that 4.95, you're going to get $10. Would it make sense that 1 ounce is going to cost more than the 3.4 pounds of beef? No. So instead, you're going to actually divide that 4.95 divided by 54.4, which is actually equal to 0.09. All right, number 33. 1/2 squared, 1/3 squared, 1/4 squared. Okay, if you have an awesome go-to fraction bar on your calculator, you got this. I hope that you do, but just remember that 1/2 squared is just 1/2 times 1/2, which is 1/4. 1/3 times 1/3 equals 1/9. And 1/4 times 1/4 equals 1/16. Even if, I'm going to admit I use my calculator to do this. So I hope you do have a fraction bar on your calculator. And if you don't, if you want to send me a pic, I'll look to see if I can find it for you, because most do now, especially if it's scientific. To get the common denominator on this one, it did 576 when you multiply all the bases together. You can go ahead and do that, like multiply each one by 4, by 9, whatever. But again, the fraction bar function of your calculator is going to give you that simplified version of 61 over 144. So you don't have to find the common denominator. Okay, what is the value of x that will satisfy the equation 0.2 times x minus 2700 equals x? So this is an old school. I'm just going to rewrite it. Just plain old solving for x. I'm going to distribute this 0.2. So 0.2x minus 0.2 times 2700 is 540. I'm going to subtract that 0.2x on both sides. Negative 540. That's a big mistake when it comes to solving equations, is remembering to bring down that minus as a negative on the next step. This is 1 minus 0.2, which is 0.8, 0.8x, divide by 0.8 on both sides, then x equals negative 675. Oh no, I pressed the button on my pen, sorry. Negative 675. If you didn't want to solve it, this is a great place to start with your plugging and chugging. If you started with 0, you get 0, blah, 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 multiply it, and you would get that it's not equal to 0. And then you can choose whether to go up or down with your number as well. In the standard XY coordinate plane, which of the following lines goes through 3, 4, and is parallel to y equals 2x plus 2? Remember, parallel means that they have the same slope. So I know my slope is going to be 2. So I'm going to start fresh from y equals mx plus b and plug in what I know about my new line that I'm going to find. I know my slope is 2. And I also know what my y and x could be. The only thing I don't know is the slope, the y-intercept. And that's what I'm going to find first to help me get the rest of my equation. So I know that x is 3, or could be 3, and 4. And I'm going to solve for b in order to get my equation. So 4 equals 2 times 3 plus b. 4 equals 6 plus b, subtract, and b equals negative 2. So in my equation, y equals, the slope has to be parallel, so it's going to be the same slope. Then we have the x, then we can plug in that b that we just found as negative 2. So our answer is B. (43) Which of the following operations will produce the smallest result when substituted for the blank in the expression? Okay, this one, y'all, you've got to just do it. You want to start in the middle and say, okay, do I want to get smaller or do I want to get bigger? So I'm going to start with the middle. I'm going to multiply 2/3 times negative 3. Well, that just gives me negative 2. Okay, let's see if I divide 2/3 times, and then I'm going to actually multiply by the reciprocal negative 1/3. So this is negative 2/6, 2/9. Whew. Don't catch me slipping. And this is actually a fraction that is bigger than negative 2. Okay, so I know that's not an answer because I already have one that's smaller than one of the answers I already gave. Okay, so what if I subtract it? I'm not going to move up because usually that means it's going to get bigger. So 2/3 minus negative 3. Well, if I subtract it, it's actually going to change it to a plus. And I don't even have to add it. because I just know it's going to be bigger than that -2. So not my answer. And then 2/3 plus -3 is really minus that 3/1. And all I know is that since this 3 is bigger, it's going to end up being -2 something or -1 something. And I can still say that this multiplication is going to be my biggest way to change my number. So anytime you multiply something, it's going to get a bigger number because it's a bigger thing. When you're averaging, you're adding and dividing. So I already know that wasn't my answer. But multiplying is going to give you the biggest change versus adding or subtracting. And dividing makes things smaller. But in this case, since we're multiplying by a negative number, C is our answer because it's going to actually keep making our number smaller. And remember, like, negative numbers are our coldest numbers. So those are our smallest numbers on the number line. That one was a thinker, for sure. All right. The value of B that will make B/3 plus 2 equals 1/4 of a true statement, which lies between the following numbers. So this is a fancy way, ACT trying to get fancy and confuse you. This is just solving an equation. We are just going to solve for B. In C, we know already, like if it lies between two numbers, I know it's not going to be a whole number, and that's okay. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Yes, I'm going to use my fraction bar calculator. 1/4 minus 2 is -7/4. I'm going to multiply by 3. So those go away. B equals -21/4. I don't know where that lies on the number line just by looking at that improper fraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide that. I'm going to divide -21 by 4. And that's -5.25. So what does that lie between? It's actually going to lie between -5 and -6. So it'd be kind of like right there. What? Oh, did I divide by the wrong number? What did I do? Oh, wait, this is correct. It's F. So which one is true? It's going to be in between -4 and -6 because -4 would be this way. So it's still in between those two numbers. See, I'm already on number 44 and I'm like slipping. So they just get harder as they go, or trickier. Or they try to trick you, we should say. We're going to trump those tricks. Okay. It says, what is the solution set of absolute value of 3a minus 2 less than or equal to 7? This is definitely something you learned in Algebra 1. And maybe my Algebra 1 students will remember. You're going to split it into two different answers. You're going to have 3a minus 2 less than or equal to +7. Or it could be 3a minus 2 greater than or equal to -7. And then you solve both of those. Add 2, add 2. -5. And then you just have to be really careful. Notice how they changed the notation. And so they put the A in the middle, okay? Well, if I put the A in the middle, then you put it in order from the smallest number to the biggest number. So -5/3, it's going to be over here. Now, since that -5/3 switched sides, that sign is actually going to flip again. If you read it from left to right, it's -5/3 is less than or equal to A. But it's still, if you read it backwards, A is greater than or equal to -5/3. So it's the same thing. And then this one will stay less than or equal to 3. Be doubly, triply careful with picking your answer, because they all look the same and you're already going fast to try to beat the time, but it's okay. All right, number 50. It says if 8 times a to the 6 times b to the 3rd is less than 0, which of the following cannot be true? So especially in cases like this, if you're unsure, plug it in, okay? So thinking about this, you want to start thinking about negative numbers because, well, it's saying less than 0. So if A were equal to B, well, and I made them both negative numbers, -1 to the 6 would actually end up being +1, but -1 to the 3rd is going to be negative. Well, so that could be true, but we're asking for cannot be true. So let's go up one. Greater than 0, well, if I put that in there, then obviously if that's just going to make it bigger and bigger. So if it's always greater than 8 times, if we have positive numbers to the 6, they're always going to be positive. And if we have positive numbers to the 3rd, they're always going to be positive. And then so boom, this can't be true if B is greater than 0. Oh wait, duh. We don't know about A though, but this is going to be negative. This could be a negative, I'm sorry. Negative to the 6 could end up being positive. So not necessarily true. My bad. And then last but not least, B is less than 0. This is our answer. Because if it's B is less than 0, and we are going to be, bye Jakeisha, thanks for coming. It's going to be, if we have B is less than 0, that's going to end up being, we don't know if that's going to change to a positive. So in this case, it could be a positive to the 6, and that was always going to be positive. This could be a negative number. Well, a negative number to the 3rd power can still be positive. And then multiply that by 8, you get a big old positive number, and then this is no longer true. That positive number is no longer less than 0. That's a thinker. Notice what number we're on. We're on number 50 now. We're thinking abstractly a little bit. Okay. 52, if a system of 2 linear equations in 2 variables has no solution and one of the equations is graphed in the xy coordinate plane below, which of the following could be the equation of the other line? Okay, so when you're graphing linear equations, you may remember, you may not, when you graph them and they have no solution, they are parallel to each other. And we've already kind of talked about it tonight, is that parallel lines have the same slope. Notice how often this is coming up. So this is definitely something you need to know. Parallel lines have the same slope. So what is our slope of this line? We're going to count our rise over run. So this would be up 4 to the right 3. So 4 over 3. Which line also has that slope? J. And the only thing to make sure here, just because this is number 52, I did double check to make sure that there wasn't another one with 4 over 3 that had the same intercept as well. If it had the same intercept and the same slope, it actually would have been all real numbers. But I just wanted to make sure that it had different y-intercepts, but the same slope. All right, number 54. In the standard XY coordinate plane, what is the equation of the line that passes through the origin in the point 3, 4? So remember, the origin is the point 0, 0. So we need to find the slope of the line. So it's 4 minus 0 over 3 minus 0, which is 4 over 3. Boom. And the other reason why it's this one that goes through the origin is that it has the y-intercept of 0. The difference between h and k are the slopes. All right, we made it through. Woo-hoo! Okay, so what I want you to realize, okay, it's 4:58. We started at about 4:05, so we probably worked for about 50 minutes flat. So 14, we did 14 plus 11 questions. We did 25 minutes in that 50 minutes. That's not enough time that you need for the test. Now, granted, I was talking, teaching, pausing, but I think it's good to reflect on the time that we spent. So, out of the questions that we actually just covered, the first half of the test had more pre-algebra, algebra questions. Granted, it only had 14, and the second part had actually 11, so 31 to 60. So really, in most tests, and I think this one might actually be an exception, but in that first 1 through 30 is where you're going to find most of your pre-algebra, algebra questions. And then 31 through 60, I call it the second half of the test, is where it kind of gets harder, but it also like you saw, let's go back to one that was decently easy, like this one. It was just solving, and then I just had to pick where the answer was between the line. Is that they just add on an extra step to get you to answer the question. So that's the ACT being not just a math test, but also an IQ test. Seeing if you can recognize the patterns or we all call them tricks. They're not really tricky. It's just making sure that you're reading the entirety of the whole problem. Alrighty. So I want to pause here since it's 5 o'clock and say, is there any question that you want me to go back to or review again or if there's any questions or lingering questions about pre-algebra or algebra before we move on to the next thing. All right. If you guys will, I am going to put a file into the chat. Okay, I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes, and then if we want it to be a little bit more, we can, so we can just take a little mini break, because I know I just talked for a long time and I know I was going fast. Oh no, I sent it just to Karina. My bad. I want you guys to look through this test and just kind of glance through it, read through the questions, see if how many questions you can identify now just by looking at it. I don't want you to solve it. No solving. I promise you guys will have a chance to solve them later, but I just want you to take 5 minutes and then we'll go through them, and I can let you know whether yes or no if it is a algebra question. All right. So let's do this. All right, there's our time starting now. right, about 1 minute left. You guys, if you want more time, just holler. Okay. There's the 5 minutes. I hope you just read through and you weren't trying to work out every single problem. We are going to work out the algebra ones. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share a Google form with you guys that's technically a quiz. Oh, I'm on the wrong account. Give me a second. There it is. Copy. I can just do it right here. Where's my share? Where's Zoom? Where did it go? Okay, into the chat. All right, there's the link to the Google form that we're going to look at. So here's the pre-algebra, algebra 1 questions that I picked out. Not saying that I didn't miss any, but just look, you can just scroll through here and see which ones that I picked, if you picked the same ones or if you picked something different. I would really like you guys to ask me about it. And so I can kind of tell you the difference between if it is an algebra or if it's algebra 2 or if it's geometry question. .56 was one that is sometimes, some teachers teach that in algebra 1, some teachers teach it, wait and teach it in algebra 2. It just depends on who you had. My algebra 1 students had it, so I counted it. And there's 59. Okay, so you guys have me until you have access to me.